Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Alberti, Chair of the Board of Finance. Tonight's meeting is December 9th, 2020. The time is now 7:01 p.m. All board members are present, as well as Jeff Newton and Mariana Stevens from the Board of Ed, Chief Finkelstein and Lieutenant Jezerski from the Public Safety. And we have Brooks Giannakos on the call this evening from Utility Communications, available to us in case we have any technical questions on the proposal before us this evening. He is present to answer any questions that we may have. So given that, I don't see anybody in the audience or in the waiting room wishing to address the Board of Finance. But in case there is, I'll just call for delegations. Just to be sure, would anybody like to address the Board of Finance this evening from the audience? Seeing no hands and hearing no voices, we'll move on to the minutes from the regular meeting of November 12th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Rich. We can open this for discussion. Did anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns? Yes, Anna.
On page 3, under the comments that I made, the first paragraph where it says Ms. Johnson noted, the third line up from the bottom, it says is the BOE being 1.4 million? It's actually 1,046,000.
So 1,046,000.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding the minutes? So John, will you move to approve those minutes as amended?
Yes, move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on November 12th, 2020.
Okay, thank you. So all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed, abstain. All right, the ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Let's move on to reports, beginning with the Board of Selectmen. Again, we have Jeff and Mariana on the call. So I'll turn the floor over to you two.
Thanks, Camille. Hope everybody's doing well. Good to see everyone. Couple of things we want to update you on this evening. Just first, kind of a COVID update across the district. So this week we hit 50 COVID cases, only associated with the district. So either a staff member or a student across our schools and central office building. The good news is none of those cases we found to be transmitted, within the buildings. They've all been either through sports that were happening in the fall between students or family gatherings or events, outside of the school. So the mitigating measures are working. Masks are working. The Department of Public Health keeps saying that, and we do as well. So our staff has done an excellent job keeping those mitigation measures up. With that being said, back in September, our virtual Viking, those students that decided to go virtual at the start of the year, was at 240 students across K-12. We are now at 400, just over 400 students are virtual. So it's almost like we've got a pretty full virtual school, going on. What I wanted to do, Camille, okay if I share my screen? I want to go over that COVID expense sheet because we wanted to update everyone on those numbers.
Yes.
Is that all right? Do you mind if I share that? Okay.
Please go right ahead.
Yeah. Just 1 second. Let me just pull that up 1 sec. All right. Okay. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully the numbers are clear. So Mariana's done an excellent job of keeping this updated for everyone, so we can continue to track the dollars and the expenditures along with the estimates. So what I'd like to just bring your attention to, and we'll kind of roll through this, and I'll hit the highlights of what's increased and what's gone down. But if you stay focused on really these three columns right here: November, what was estimated back in October, and then the change since the last report. So this first category, total estimated PPE, so all of our protective equipment, masks, plexiglass is the biggest one. You'll see a increase of 55,000 since our last projection, and that was because we were starting to calculate out our focus and our goal is to still bring all of our K-6 students back. We were hoping to do that after Thanksgiving. Obviously, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in January either, but hopefully maybe by February, March, sometime in that time frame, we really would like to still focus on trying to bring back our K-6 students. With that being said, we're going to need additional plexiglass. So that's the biggest expense. So that's really what comprises that $55,000 there, that projected increase. We scroll down, minimal, we needed an additional HEPA air purifier, $565 there under supplies. So that was it for that personal equipment and supplies. If we go over here to technology, we found that there's an estimated decrease in our Zoom license, our district-wide Zoom license for all of our 600 employees. So we're cut that back by $7,000. So went from 27,800 down to 20,008 roughly. So that would be it for total technology on this page. And then here's where we get into some more of the comprehensive numbers that come forward and decreases. All in all, we're down a pretty significant amount of money, which is good. In transportation, we're realizing less dollars required for bus monitors. At the beginning, before the school year started, we were planning on having a bus monitor on every one of the buses. We have not needed to do that. We still have 4 monitors that are monitoring our higher volume buses, but for the most part, buses have stayed fairly low in student population. So we're not planning on adding any other bus monitors, as well as no additional costs, less additional costs for cleaning and sanitizing buses as well. So there's a savings of $13,647 there that we're estimating. And then a bigger savings down here, you can see Kelly Services. Kelly is our sub service, our contracted sub service. They provide subs for teachers, subs for paraprofessionals. It is extremely hard to find subs right now. So we are struggling across the board, as every district is. So not bringing forth as many subs as we anticipated, we're realizing a significant reduction in that estimate of $80,000. So that's a pretty sizable savings there. They're just not out there. People are not wanting to sub, and those that are getting snatched up pretty quick. So Kelly Services is very limited on subs, as every district is struggling. If we keep going, personnel and benefits. So here's where we see some increases. As I mentioned, we are up over 400 students in our virtual program now. Hence, we needed an additional teacher. So you can see the 62,000 change here. We're going to be adding another, we're in the process of interviewing for another part-time teacher to support a 2nd grade and a 4th grade class. Right now, both of those classes have, one has, I think, 34 students in it now, and the other one has 30 students in it. So we've got to provide some support. Those are extremely high, class size numbers. So we're looking to provide a little support. Somebody that can split between those 2 classes and do a content area, maybe take on math or language arts, something of that nature. So we'll see an additional uptick in the future there. The program itself, as I mentioned, has grown. We need a little bit more of administrative support for it. Basically a school now, a 6th school with 400 plus students. So that's the uptick of 8,000 there. Proctors, we thought that we would have and allow more teachers that wanted to or needed to go remote for whatever reason it might be, to then have a proctor in their classroom, so the teacher would be zooming into the class, the proctor would be there to manage the class. We're not finding that to be the most effective. We have a few teachers doing that, and that started at the beginning of the year. Not the most effective use of instructional technique. So we're not doing that any further. So we're finding the need for less proctors, so we've reduced there. Custodial overtime and custodial staff, a reduction of 96,981. We had hoped to have and estimated to have much more custodial support with all the cleaning, surface cleaning. We're finding the need to not, well, number one, they're not out there, subs again for custodians. So that's issue number one. And then number two, we're not finding a great need for multiple custodians to be cleaning, all over the place. DPH has basically stated that, COVID is not contracted necessarily off of surfaces as much as it's an airborne virus. So we have lessened the dollar amount for additional custodial staff. We're still cleaning. I want to be sure and clear to the public that we're absolutely still cleaning and doing as much as we can, especially on Wednesdays when we're remote, but not as much as we anticipated. So you have a total personnel reduction of $61,624 estimated change since the last report. Special education expenses at the bottom here, you'll see a reduction of 95,000. We had estimated around 200. That reduction, we give Kim Davis, who's our special ed director, kudos, because we were one of the few districts at the start of the year that we decided to bring all of our or offer to any student that was identified under special education to come back 4 days a week. Many took us up on that. I think that really helped in reducing any future costs this year for additional services or whatever it might be. So we have an estimated savings there of 95,000, which brings us to a total change of 202,000 less than we had estimated back on October 13th. So on October 13th, we were estimating a total projection by the end of the year of 1.5 million. We're now looking at an estimated total projection. Well, there's an estimated total projection of 1.3 million, but then minus out the grants, the ESSER grant and the CARES Act grant, minus that 466,395, we're now looking at a total projected COVID expenditure of 844,790, rather than the 1.046 after applying, those grants that we will be receiving. So that's good news. We're down 202,000. There are some potential additional savings that could come forth, some more in transportation. We anticipate, hopefully, maybe some more in some of these other categories and areas. Staffing will go up a little bit. Can rest assured that, even with the half-time teacher that we need to hire, but that might be it. We'll see as we move into January. So that's where we are number-wise. The other thing I wanted to, and I can come back to this if we need to talk about it, but the other thing I wanted to mention too, and ask the Board of Finance, with the money that we returned, the $500,000 that we ended up returning from last year, should we start talking about, and I spoke with Mark and Anna Johnson, we talked recently, should we be thinking about potentially going for an appropriation to move that money over to help offset some of that $844,000. We also should have some money from our budget freeze, hopefully at the end of the year. So we don't know at this time if we're going to come to, potentially request an additional appropriation. But hopefully, if we do, it's minimal. It's not, $1 million or even 500,000. I don't, maybe max a couple hundred. I don't know. We're still working that down. But that's our question really for you. Should we be working to apply or do an appropriation for that 500,000 from the end of last year? So I'll halt there. Any questions that anybody has about the expenditures that are all COVID related, just to be clear?
Oh, actually,
Yes, Anne.
yeah. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for the presentation and the update. Just wondering, of some of these, PPE costs and direct COVID-related expenses, are there any more reimbursables here? there's, as you know, there's many streams of money that go into this federal CARES Act. So of the increases that you've shown, will any of those be covered? Have you explored those?
Nothing out of the two grants that we're receiving, the 466,000. Mariana, I don't know if anything else that you've heard of that potentially could offset some of those additional costs?
No, not as of right now. So the CARES Act, and we're using to offset our special education costs that we're incurring due to COVID.
A Flanders teacher, we need to hire a
Correct.
special ed teacher at Flanders School this year. The CARES Act's covering that.
And then contracted services that our special ed director needs due to and again, she can explain better, but there's different needs that were not there last year for students regarding social, emotional, et cetera. And then the other grant that's available, we are offsetting 100,000 of our PPE is going to be offset by a grant, the governor's, the Corona Relief Fund.
Right, under GEAR.
Yep,
Right.
so 100,000 is going to offset PPE, and then the balance of 181, we're applying to the virtual Viking salaries. They did allow us to transfer that to salaries, but that's all reflected at the bottom of this sheet. I'm not aware of anything else.
So I guess my question is, for the GEAR money, that was an application that you all had to make. So can you reapply if you have additional expenses?
That ends December. Everything has to, for the GEAR money, to be spent by 12/30. So, yeah, 12/30. So something else could come out right now. I'm not aware of anything.
Well, I think, I was just reading, I think there's about $196 million that the state still has to spend out of the total, what was it, 1.38 billion that the state of Connecticut got. So where that's going to go is not clear. Do you have contact frequently with OPM or Board of Education that you can, this may seem like a silly question, but advocate for yourselves that, we've needed to spend more money?
So I'll let Jeff speak to his group, but I have the Connecticut Association of Business Officials. The organization actually hires a legislative person. They are constantly informing us, updating us as soon as something is available, if something comes up, or again, because I do know that there is that additional funding, but no one's saying
Where it's going.
or if we can apply for it. And just the process of this CRF grant that we had to go through, we applied, then they changed their mind on a few things, we had to reapply. So it was like a three-step process, because they weren't even sure about some of the eligibility requirements.
Okay. All right.
That's the same for our organization as well, our Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents. We're hoping more information will come forth from the commissioner, but nothing as of yet.
Because really at the beginning of the process, the governor was quite clear in interviews and in news articles that, he was willing to support all technology, related to getting everyone, up and running. So, and that wasn't just in certain districts. I think he was speaking generally. So it would be good to see. For example, I know you have your mobile document cameras. Wouldn't it be great if, you could be reimbursed for that, because that was a significant expense and important to the process of getting, getting virtual learning going. So
I have a regional meeting with the area superintendents tomorrow, and I'll ask too to see if anybody else has heard anything. But but it's a really good question, because nothing has come forward.
Right, and right now technology is not an eligible expense for the Corona Relief Fund. It's very limited with what you can spend that money on. And because I had asked about the mobile cameras and a few other things, and it was not allowed.
So maybe also, I know I can also speak to our local officials too, who, may bring some questions to bear, at OPM or something, and their contacts. So always good to just a little pressure on. Thank you.
By the way, I'll send this document to you, Camille, tomorrow, and Anna Johnson, I'll send it to you as well, so it can be, distributed, that we had updated. So
I
you have a
appreciate
copy.
that, Jeff. Thank you. That was one of my questions.
Yep.
Ann Chikello, did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. For the plexiglass, you said it was going to be 55,000.
Yep.
Is that for like K through 12, or what is that for exactly? And how is that set up? I'm just trying to understand it.
That's split roughly 25, 25 or 25, 27. That's K elementary, K4, and then grade 5, 6. So 5, 6 at the middle school. And so just those grades, that's all that's referencing, mainly for, the cafeteria separation, because with everybody back in, you can't have 6 feet apart any longer. So the distancing component, recommended distancing of 6 feet, is eliminated. So there's a lot of concern with that. So we're trying to be prepared for that in classrooms, on desks, desk shields, foldable desk shields, as well as in the cafeteria for lunch.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do any other members have any questions for the Board of Ed members? Okay, I just have 2 quick questions. Oh, go ahead, John.
Okay, one quick question. Last time you spoke before us, you were mentioning the possible deductions that you had. You mentioned the grant for 460,000, and then maybe getting back to 500,000 from the town.
Mhm.
You also mentioned a $400,000 budget freeze. Is that still in effect?
Yeah, we're still working there. There's where hopefully the difference that's left over. If we apply the 500,000 from last year that we gave back, and then if we're trying to come up with as much as we can through the budget freeze. Mariana, we don't have I know it's still early, but don't have an estimate on that, yet. But and we don't know, what expenses there might be. One, for instance, if we don't run winter sports, we should have some savings there. But at this point, winter sports is supposed to start up on January 19th. And stipends would be paid if they, if we do run the sports. But if we don't run sports, then we would have that money for stipends, which you could apply to the end. So that'll be down to probably later in the, I don't know, maybe April, May timeframe, where we're looking at a closer picture as to what we'll have left for end of the year money to help offset that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So again, I don't know what you wanted. Oh, I'm sorry, Camille, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I just had 2 questions for you, Jeff. One, you had mentioned that the virtual Viking class size went from 240 to over 400. And so that's the reason why you need to hire a couple of additional resources for those classrooms. There's 34,
Exactly.
35. So wouldn't the enrollment in the other classrooms be reduced? Isn't it a shift? And can we shift existing resources to cover that without hiring?
Well, keep in mind for kids that are going out to the virtual program, we have students that are hybrid right now that might be coming in 4 days a week versus 2 days a week. So some that are going out to virtual, but others are coming back more in full. So we're trying to keep a balance of how many are in the classroom while also maintaining the recommendations of 6 feet apart, which averages out to anywhere between 8 to 10 students in a given class on site. So we're trying to maintain those numbers and keep them balanced between cohort A, cohort B, and then what we call our Viking 4s, which are 4-day-a-week students.
Right. Okay.
So we're trying to keep so when some go out, we're trying to offer to bring some in. There's still a lot of parents that want their kids on site 5 days a week, and or 4 days a week. So that's we're seeing that shift both ways.
So there's so the shift of resources isn't really possible because of the limited number of kids that are allowed in a classroom now. So
Exactly.
okay, so that makes sense. So would we expect in the next budget cycle, if everything were to go back to normal, that we could see a reduction then?
I haven't gotten that far yet as to what staffing wise, if there would be a potential reduction. Going back to normal, we would expect, starting next year, all of our kids to be back in those classes. Though I will say the one area we're a little concerned about is kindergarten, because a lot of parents held their kindergartner students back. They would have started this year, but because of COVID, they said, you know what, I'm not going to send my child. I'm going to wait a year. So we don't know what those numbers are going to look like at the start of next year. They could be higher.
Okay.
So we're trying to work through that. So that's one area of concern. But
Okay.
The other grade levels should be fairly balanced out. We're also looking to see if, there's 1 or 2 retirements that we know of right now. So we will definitely be looking at, all the class sizes.
Okay,
as
fair
well.
enough. And in terms of a special appropriation that needs to be scheduled, what is the timing for the Board of Ed in terms of critical times, in terms of cash flow? Do you have enough cash to pay your bills through the end of February, or when
Yeah.
do you recommend that this should come before the Board of Finance, this appropriation request?
Well, the current year's operating budget, is okay right now. It's just the question of, do we want to wait and that 500 from last year? And I guess I'll kind of defer to, Anna and Mariana. Do we apply that now and drop that, what's 844,000 currently down to 344,000? Or do we just wait even longer? I just kind of wanted to put that out there with the Board of Finance as an option. But really, Anna, I don't know if you have any thoughts on, should it be done now? Should we wait? I don't have an answer for you on that as to what would be the best time. We're okay operating wise right now. But without that money, that's another question too. I don't know if there was if that, that money would be earmarked for something else.
Yeah.
I would hope not, but
I don't think so. I hope not. Okay, Anna, can you weigh in?
Yeah, so it would be my recommendation, my thought that such a request, such an appropriation should be in place by April 1st of the fiscal year. So anywhere between, let's say January 1st and March, we should move forward with this.
Okay, so why don't we schedule this for the March meeting? And then by that time, there's a couple more months of data that we have that we can maybe zero in on that number a little bit closer.
And remember, it needs to go to the Board of Selectmen first.
Yeah.
So how about March?
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's fine with us. Yeah, we're happy to do whatever is most convenient.
Okay,
That seems to make sense. You're right, Kim. It gives us more time. We can kind of see, what else might come forward. Hopefully there's some more savings. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention in that document too. We have an estimated 100,000 for additional expenses. That might drop too. We might not need. Mariana was correct, right? 100,000. I think. If you're muted, Mariana.
Yeah, there's 100,000 in there. The FFO felt it would just be important to leave it there just in case. But again, that is not anything that is identified for a specific purpose right now. It's kind of a placeholder. So that, as Jeff said, could be reduced.
okay.
So we'll keep an eye on that one as well.
Okay, so we'll look forward to the report that you shared on the screen this evening, and I'll distribute that to the board members, and then we'll schedule this special appropriation request for March for the BOS and BOF.
Great, and I'll send that to you tomorrow. Anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to reach out after your review. Again, we kind of had finished updating it earlier today, and wanted to make sure you had a chance to look at that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, thank you very much
Okay.
for the presentation and the update.
No problem.
Stay safe. Happy
Yeah.
holidays. We'll see you next
All right.
year,
All right,
Thanks, everybody.
or maybe Monday.
Yes, we'll see you Monday. That's right. Monday, 5 o'clock on Zoom for
Right,
our
okay.
budget workshop. Great. We'll see you then.
Sounds good. Okay,
Thanks.
take care. Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the report from the first selectman. Mark?
Hi, everyone. Just a few remarks. Of course, is that, does everyone see that? Or is that just
Everyone-
me, an Adobe
Everyone
file?
see what?
Something's going on with my computer here. This is very strange. Okay, well, okay. Let me just see if I can, there we go. Got it. You heard a big announcement, I'm sure, through the grapevine that we're going to close the building, all the town buildings to the general public beginning tomorrow morning. If you remember in the spring, we had while the pandemic was hitting, we did a very quick close. We closed the town facilities and then we slowly opened. We allowed by appointment only. First of all, we closed them down. Everyone worked from home. And then slowly we brought people back working. And then we opened it up slowly for appointment only and escorted people into the building and then opened it up to the general public. We're going to kind of do the reverse thing right now. We don't want to overreact, but everything I'm hearing is that this pandemic is going to get worse. I was on a call the other day that said, we're going to look back to the first week of December and think that was child's play. We're going to think that was nothing compared to when we're sitting out there mid-January, third week of January, and it is peaking across the country. We see it already peaking in California now. We got to do our part, and frankly, we got to keep our town hall employees, our public works employees, our library employees safe. So cutting off the public from that access brings their exposure down a little bit. We have had we had 7 instances, I think, this week of COVID-related either people on our staff or their wives or husbands or people they live with or they've been come in contact with. So it's growing, it's spreading quite quickly in the southeastern Connecticut area. Many of those contacts, none of them came from the public. Many of them came from home and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. But we still want to limit the exposure to our staff. So we're going to do that. If we need to go to another phase, we'll reevaluate in a couple of weeks whether we close town hall permanently to public, meaning not by appointment. We'll come in and we'll work and we'll keep it locked up, and we may go to a work from home situation if it even gets worse from there. And we'll evaluate every couple of weeks. I think that's the prudent thing to do. I'm very concerned what's going on in the community. In the region, I got a call from the prison warden today, and we talked about what's going on over there. They have 83 or 86 prisoners that have tested positive, and a number of workers over there as well. That's taxing to our ambulance company, who has to go out there and bring folks to the hospitals when it gets to a dire spot. They have 2 medical doctors on staff there, but when it gets to a point when someone needs urgent care, it's our ambulance that has to respond to that. And we talked about that a little bit. We also, I've been in touch with Bridebrook Rehab. They too, once again, have had some situations in there. It's again, when you're talking about a prison or nursing homes, the situation is dire. In the general population, a lot more outbreaks than we were seeing in April and May. So again, I'm very concerned what's going on. And, there's daily conversations with either the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, with CCM. They had their conference last week that focused a lot on COVID, with DPH, with the COG, the Council of Governments. Our 22 mayors and first selectmen in the area and town managers get together almost on a weekly basis and discuss what's going on in their towns and what everyone's doing and best practices. Best practices is always a good thing. As you know, schools are already closed to the public. There was some comments on online social media. What about the schools? Well, the schools are closed to the general public. You and I can't go up to the front door, get buzzed in and go hang out with some of the teachers and the administration and all that. We do that on a regular basis, and many people do, and dads and moms do during regular times, but these are not regular times. So that is that. I did attend the CCM annual convention last week, where it's normally in Foxwoods, and it's a gala This was at my desk at Town Hall, Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting, 8 hours, 2 days in a row. Very informative, very insightful. One thing I took away that would pertain to Board of Finance is there is not great concern among the legislators and folks that lobbyists that are involved with the state government that funding to the towns will be cut this year. There's plenty of federal money coming down to support that. We all would be concerned, well, with revenues coming down, with, people not driving, they weren't buying gas, so therefore the gas tax collections, everything that had to do with any business. And if you consider the state of business, substantial revenue depreciation and losses. There doesn't seem to be a concern about that this year. So we will use the numbers that they give us for ECS and pilot money and all the things that they typically give us. The concern will roll out the next 2, 3, 4 years. So not this coming year, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4, when that federal money dries up. There's still plenty of federal money out there being given to the states. There's a lot of money that they gave us in the first round that they haven't used all of it. And there is anticipation there will be more federal bailout for the states for operations, if nothing else. If it doesn't trickle down to the citizens with $1,000 checks and tax breaks and all that, that might not happen if Congress doesn't get it together, but there will be money available for operations, and what we get is considered operations. There is that feeling up in the state that not to be concerned about this year's budget. Of course, we have things to worry about revenues coming in and the burden to the taxpayers. So I know we'll have another wonderful budget season. By the way, we're starting our budget process at the town hall. Anna has been collecting budgets from the departments. I think they're all due this week. We've been going over, I've been meeting with some of the department heads already to talk about changes needed, anticipation of some things coming up in capital, etc. And we'll obviously be walking into that. I'm going to say it out loud right now that I'm anticipating another season of budget reviews online. We should plan for that now. If the vaccines all go out and 70% of the people get the vaccine or whatever the magic number is, and we can all be in a room together and the public can be invited in and all, then we'll, by all means, when we can do it, we will have meetings in person. But I would anticipate at least planning for this operation. We do a lot of planning that doesn't come to fruition. I think, unfortunately, this one probably will. We've put together a subcommittee at the Board of Selectmen level to review the fire study that we did a couple of years ago, but also take it to another level in-house. We are looking at what we need to do to look at fire administration for the next 20 years. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of concern with the drop of volunteers. We're paying more and more part-time folks. We have more full-timers on, but in all that, we don't have one paid administrator. Nobody's in charge. We give our 2 volunteer chiefs who don't work for us, who aren't appointed by us, who do not answer to us, are always wonderful, dedicated people, but not accountable technically, and we give them hundreds of thousands of dollars to put together budgets and buy hoses and all the things that they do. And we've grown as a town, and the need is there, the concern is there, and dealing with the public's trust, the public's money, we should have better oversight. So there is concern. There's talk about a fire chief, a fire administrator, even a part-time fire administrator that would watch over that, and also watch over all that goes into the liability of those folks. They're town employees without a boss. Technically, the first selectman is, because I'm the only ranking person between them and the top. But the certification, the continuing ed, the cross training from department to department, et cetera, that all is part of the town's liability that technically no one is responsible for. So we're going to be looking over that. It's going to take us months and months to do that. There are 3 selectmen that are going to start collecting some data, and we're going to be talking about that at the selectmen level. Lastly, the light parade is this weekend. We're doing a reverse light parade. If you so are inclined, it's supposed to be Saturday. They're calling for rain Saturday. We might push that to Sunday, but that's not my decision to make. We'll let the committee do that. It will be up in McCook's Park. You will drive in past St. Agnes and go in as if you were going to McCook's, and you'll go up the hill, and within the grass up in the upper part will be all the floats lined up, and you in your cars safely with your family will observe the floats. So it'll be a reverse parade where the parade is stationary and the people are moving through, and that will start. I don't know when it starts. I'm sure as soon as it gets dark, we'll start it up. But look for that and pray for some good weather. And that's about all I got going on these days. Lots going on, but that's all I have to report.
All right, thank you for the update, Mark. Does any Board of Finance member have any questions for the first selectman? Any questions? Okay. All right, thanks again. With that, we'll move on to Anna Johnson, the Finance Director, and we'll listen to her report this evening.
Oh, good evening. So in your packages, I provided reports for this fiscal year through the end of November, as well as final reports for the fiscal year that ended June 30th. So I'll go over the June 30th reports first. And in addition to that, I did send out electronically today the unassigned fund balance reports for the period ended June 30th, as well as November 30th. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them at all. In terms of the fiscal year that ended June 30th, we grew our fund balance by $1.6 million. With an ending balance of $7,926,106, which is 10.4% of our current adopted budget. Our target is to have at least 8% per the policy that we have. However, it is recommended by the rating agencies that for a community with our demographics, that it be more like 15%. So, that's that information. I did do a little calculation on the bottom, which on how I came up with the expended amount. So it's the expended amount per the report. And I added to the expenditures the 3 items that we carried over into this fiscal year's budget, which was the remaining balance in the retirement liability account, the AED equipment, and the police canine. And then also included in that number are the end of year encumbrances, which was a little over $210,000. So that's kind of how I came up with the calculation of what that balance was at the end of the year. I don't know if anyone has any questions on the revenue expenditure or final encumbrance report.
Does anybody have any questions for the Finance Director this evening? Questions at all?
Okay,
I
so
have,
I'll go over. Oh, did you have one? I'm sorry, Camille.
no, I was going to say I have no concerns
Okay.
tonight about the report
Okay.
you submitted to us.
Okay, and then for the month that ended November 30th, in order to come up with the, I actually show that we're looking at about a $768,000 operating deficit for this year. And, that's just a snapshot of this point in time. So in terms of the estimated expenditures that I used, obviously I used, November 30th as they were. And I made the assumption that the Board of Education is going to spend all of their remaining budget less about $271,000. So how I came up with the $271,000 is the additional, the report that they just went over with you, which shows that they're looking at about 844,000. When I did the fund balance calculation, I used $846,000. And the reason I did it that way is because last week, Jeff and Mariana met with Mark and I via Zoom, and they said that the deficit decreased by about 200,000. So I just took the prior report and reduced it by 200,000. So anyways, with that said, my estimate, if they, if they have the budget freeze to make up the difference, that would be the 271,846. I added to it the $846,000 that they were estimating to be over budget, estimating the town's going to spend an additional 9.9 million plus about 3.3 million we have right now in encumbrances. So that comes out to 76,691,711. And the revenues, you did receive a report in your packets for the estimated end of year revenues, which is year to date plus an estimate from December 1st through June 30th. And that would be 75,770,000. So of the $990,000, the $900,000 in fund balance that we applied to this year's budget, I'm saying that we're going to need, based on that estimate, we're going to need to use about 747,000 of that, which would mean that we return about 152 of that, back to fund balance. So at the end of the day, we would have about a 9.4% unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. But that's based on this year's adopted budget, which really you would be looking at the percent of next year's budget. So that number would actually probably be lower, because I would expect that the budget for next year will be, there will be somewhat of an increase for next year's budget over this year's budget. So that's kind of how I came up with the unassigned fund balance. When I did start looking at the activity for November, I did feel that the prior year tax collections were kind of, slacking off compared to the way that they were coming in last year, which, when you look at the big picture and the individuals that are struggling, it would make more sense that it would, it would happen in your prior year taxes. That could change. We still have 7 months left to the fiscal year. When I did do the end of year projections, I tried to take a more conservative approach when I looked at different things. Like I look at what we took in last year, in the last 7 months, but I also looked at what we've taken in this year to date, and said, okay, if we collected the average for the rest of the year, where would it be? And I tried to take the lower number to be more conservative. So we're just going to have to keep looking at this every month. But I will comment that when I looked at it at the end of October, we were going to use about $125,000 less in that 900,000. In other words, we were going to return about 270,000, and now the more current estimate is 152,000. So, that did indicate that there's been somewhat of a, a slack off in the way the revenues are coming in. So we're going to have to really, keep an eye on that.
So that's not exactly a monthly burn rate, $100,000 a month. That's just kind of a snapshot, right?
Right. So,
Right.
once we go, at the end of December, we'll take a look at the activity through December, and, keep doing the same analysis to see how much it changes from month to month. I mean, like going from October to November, things look, not quite as good at the end of November as they did at the end of October. Although on the other hand, the Board of Ed did did decrease, what they think they'll need by 200,000. So, that improved a little bit, but on the other hand, the revenue piece, went down a little bit, which, that will make it more challenging for us in working on our projections for next year's budget.
Just a quick aside question, Anna. So the reval that's going on right now, the numbers that the assessor comes up with will be for the October 1, 2021 grand list?
I think it's the 22 grand list.
Oh, 2022.
Yeah, but you know what? I will follow up with her tomorrow and send you a note on that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, does anybody have any questions for the finance director on any of the reports that we received? Any questions at all from anybody? Ann Chiquello?
Hi, Anna. I was wondering, do you have any major concerns or any issues that, are concerning to you, just going through and making up all these reports?
Well, the one thing, like as I said, like through October, the revenue seemed to be holding our own with the revenues coming in. But at the end of November, I feel like there's been a slight shift going the other way. So, obviously that's a concern. So we're gonna have to just really look at it, see, how the changes go from month to month.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Any other questions? One final time?
Yes.
Okay,
I noticed in going through the detailed report on the Commission on Aging, the new hire that they've got at the senior center hasn't come up yet on that. So I imagine going forward, that'll be another line item that they.
Yeah, so I believe that the program coordinator came on board in the month of, actually in the month of November.
Oh, okay.
So when it was a month of right at the very end. So you will start seeing, an uptick in the expenditure in that account.
Oh, okay. And then to kind of follow on Ann's question about your concerns, are there any particular areas of revenue that are more striking that look like they're trending downward than others?
I thought it was in the prior year tax collections. That was my biggest, that's what really kind of stuck out at me. And in looking at the end of year projections, it doesn't look like, the outside tuition is going to come in a little bit less than what was originally projected. Our landfill deposits are showing a little bit lower. Tipping fees have been coming in a little bit lower.
And have permits started to level off? I know that we've been kind of reaping a bounty on permits through the year, and I'm wondering if that's starting to taper off.
You know what? They're still coming in. When I did the projection on what I estimate through the end of the year, I did that very conservatively. So I estimated an additional 140 coming in between December 1st and June 30th. And I think that's a conservative number. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Still are
you
busy.
going on the conservative side. Thank you.
okay, any further questions? Going once, Going twice. Okay. Seeing no hands and hearing no one speak, we'll move on to new business this evening. We have a special appropriation in the amount of $19,118 from the CNRE account for a radio tower infrastructure. On the call this evening, we have Chief Finkelstein, we have Lieutenant Jezierski. We also have Brooks Giannakos, who put together the proposal from Utility Communications. He's available to us if we have any technical questions. He would be the go-to person. So with that, I'll turn this meeting over to the chief and have you give us a little bit of background about what the appropriation is about. Chief, I should remind you that I think only 3 of us, Ann Santoro, John Birmingham, and myself, were on the Board of Finance back in 2017 when Marcus Communications came before us and the original, or actually they went before the Board of Selectmen to negotiate that deal for this tower over on Darrow's Ridge. So we have 3 members this evening that have no idea what this is all about. So if you could just give us a little bit of background, that would be very helpful.
Understood, and understanding that this also predated my being here. So in early May of, first of all, thank you for having us here tonight. And just to point out too, we had Lieutenant Jezierski with us when we talked about the body cameras. She's going to be taking a larger and larger role into the technology and communications. She's been in charge of dispatch. With kind of the restructuring a little bit of the police department in her new position, she's going to be taking on a much larger role. So you'll see her more often in these type of presentations. So, and thank her for coming in here tonight. To go back and recap a little bit, May of 2017, the town of East Lyme signed a contract with Marcus communications vendor from Manchester, to put up a tower in the northern part of town. Historically, the northern part of our community, which is obviously very rural, hilly, had a difficult time in communications. These communications are for your police, your fire, your EMS, your school buses, your public works. So it's wide ranging in those emergency and non-emergency communications that are taking place. The former fire marshal, Dick Morris, was intricate in, over at least a 10-year period, trying to put together a radio system that provided as full of coverage as possible in the town of East Lyme. The last piece was really putting a tower site up in that northern part of town. A deal was struck with Marcus, who was also on the commercial side of things in need of putting up a tower for its business ventures in that area, including the Montville, Salem type area. So that deal was struck with Marcus. A little bit of kind of understanding, in order for us to put up a tower, that's about a $200,000 venture. So it's advantageous for a community to try to find a commercial partner who has a business need to also have that erected. This lease took place, it's being erected on town land. The town has the ability to place infrastructure on that tower to utilize that. And then the town is also, as part of that agreement, getting a lease payment from Marcus. Part of what is required of us is for our radio frequencies, and we have, again, radio frequencies for all of those services that I discussed. There's infrastructure, there is antennas, cabling, as well as some other communications type activities that have to take place that are in that tower, on that tower site. So in that partnership, Marcus is now, even though this project has been significantly delayed for those several years, is to the point where they're coming to us to say, we need to be able to put that infrastructure up as we build this tower and as we put our items on that tower. And that's why we come before you today. Unfortunately, when this project first was put together, in conversations with Mr. Morris, there was a lot of unknowns as far as what exactly we would have to provide in this process. Brooks, who is also on this call, is our radio vendor. He has, in the last couple months, worked very closely with Marcus, as has Bill Shear for the town of East Lyme, from the engineering kind of standpoint, to really come up with this list of what we're going to need. And unfortunately, we were not in control of the timing, so this couldn't fall in line with the budget season. When budget preparations took place last year, we had no ability to know when this was going to come about. And we cannot have them delay their project, or they're not delaying their project for our budget season for next year, which brings us before you for this expenditure. So the expenditure that's before you is for that cabling. It is for the antennas. It is for the computer programming, because this is there's a lot of IP-based type infrastructure that's on there. There's microwave infrastructure, which has to communicate with other tower sites, voter receivers, which choose when a field unit is keying up their radio, which is the best and closest signal. So there's a lot of, technology here. And I think, again, from my standpoint, this greatly enhances our communications. It allows us and our units to be safe in the field and to be able to continue to communicate. And we're really doing this for a far less public expenditure than having to put the tower and maintain that tower ourselves. That's a big piece too. We don't have to maintain this tower. We put our infrastructure up there. Granted, if one of our pieces, the antenna, were to fail, for example, we would have to replace that. But the other pieces we don't have to, have any concerns with. So it's certainly advantageous to us. So, that expenditure that's before you is for $19,000, dollars and change. And again, I think it's well used by the town and will provide us service, very good service into the future.
Okay, thank you for that summary of the project. I'm just going to start because I have a feeling I might have a few more questions. The tower that's currently on the Walnut Hill property is a temporary tower?
That is correct, yes.
And who owns that tower currently?
I am not aware. Again, that was a deal that was made with Mr. Morris and I believe a combination of Marcus and the people that run the solar field. So
Okay.
Answer, I know that tower is utilized by us on a temporary basis, but as far as the ownership, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, but we do own the equipment on some of the equipment on the top of that tower. And that's included in this quote here, the 19,000, to move some of that equipment over to.
Correct. So some of the microwave
Road.
equipment is going to be right. It will be relocated from one tower site to the other. Correct.
So from my understanding, and I did talk to Dick Morris the other day too, because I wanted a refresher about what was going on. And the equipment that we currently own is worth a few $100,000. And I believe that it was purchased back in 2012, even though it didn't go into operation over there until like 2017. But the life of that equipment, I think, is probably 8 to 10 more years.
I would question what equipment are you referring to? Several $100,000 worth that's on. I'm not from, again, my knowledge, there's antennas, there is the cabling that goes up to those antennas. There is, equipment that is in the temporary ambulance that is up there, and some
Right.
power generating equipment, but
All that equipment that the town owns on that site, I think, came to about a couple $100,000. Now I understand the cabling can't be reused for that, so we need new cabling to go onto the new tower. But I'm just, so I just was a little bit curious as to why now 3 years later, we're ready to move forward with the tower on Mostowy Road. What kind of improvements are we going to get out of that over the temporary situation that's in place?
well, I think
Is it a taller tower? Will we get better?
I think in part you answer your own question. It was a temporary tower that is not even constructed to be a permanent structure. And the plan that you were part of in putting together was to create or get this deal to put up the permanent tower, or so you weren't, so the Board of Selectmen was. And this temporary tower was meant to simply just be temporary, and some of that equipment, which could be relocated, would be relocated. So this tower is not, if you were to visit that structure, certainly is not capable of being a permanent structure. And I will give you an example. When the power goes out in the northern part of town, we lose communications for sometimes 5 to 7 days in that area, because again, it is a very temporary situation up there with a light tower generator to try to run that backup. So it's really shoestring and cups and strings to try to make that work. But again, I would certainly question the several $100,000s worth of equipment there, and Brooks can factor in on that because he's been intricate in that process. But to my knowledge, it's nowhere near that amount of, monetary amount for equipment there.
Okay, so I guess that was my question, because when I think of temporary, I think maybe 3 months, 6 months, but that's been up there for 3 years. So I wasn't sure if
But
additional.
that wasn't I believe if that's not by design. That contract was signed in May of 2017 for them to, start construction. It was not our decision as from the town standpoint of when Marcus Communications as a commercial vendor started their construction. As I
Right.
started by saying, they've significantly delayed this project for, reasons that I don't
Yep,
understand.
understood. I just wasn't sure if over the years we had put more money into that temporary structure to make it more permanent. So
I think we honestly put more Band-Aids on it. I think
okay.
we've put tape and shoestrings onto it, but certainly we have not put money out of the budget into that.
Okay, so with this new tower going up on Mostowy Road, or in the municipal, I guess it's somewhere in the 100 acres that the town owns over there, will that be the last tower that public safety will require to get the optimal communications with all the radios and all the first responders and the school buses, and or is there something else coming down? Like, is there a bigger plan, or is
Well,
this the final step?
Again, and this is the plan that was constructed by Mr. Morris. So I don't want to try to speak on an expert level in something that, quite honestly, even today isn't inside of my job purview. I'm here because there's no other person for the town to bring this forward, unfortunately.
No, I see that Mark has dropped off the call, so
the radio systems, that's why we have a vendor. That's why we have a technological, company that comes in and does this. But my understanding from my conversations with Mr. Morris and from the conversations with our vendor, this is a enormous piece in really trying to make our coverage inside of the community as good as possible. As far as future endeavors and future plans, this culminates that, that process and that connectivity between all our ventures. If part of the process for the new building, we're trying to incorporate the fiber from the state, utilize that to its full capability, utilize our technology to the fullest capacity. So there's, we don't have a tower now that we're, going to have to piece in to make better coverage. This should give us the full coverage, in my understanding, the full coverage that we're going to need.
So was the new fire marshal involved with this at all in these meetings to?
The fire marshal's job description does not include anything to do with radio communications.
Okay, all right, I just assumed it did because the prior fire marshal is.
Well, the prior fire marshals had a vastly different job, in the public safety realm, and there was a lot of when you eliminated positions in town, you eliminated some of that ability to do those things. Not you, but the town. But by cutting out fire marshal, deputy fire marshal, and people that really focused almost full time on those things, we've kind of gotten away with some of that institutional knowledge, but also the time and ability to do those things. Because if you think about it, you got rid of one full-time person that spent a vast majority of his time doing these things.
Oh, who was that?
The deputy fire marshal. When you have Chris Taylor as deputy fire marshal, that's an unfilled position. So you don't have a deputy fire marshal anymore.
Chris Taylor was the fire marshal after Dick Morris,
right.
Correct?
And you
Right,
eliminate,
so
the town eliminated the deputy, so you no longer had two fire marshals.
I wasn't even aware that we ever did have a deputy fire marshal.
Yep, you had Dick was full-time, Chris was full-time, and they spent a great amount of time doing these projects, just like this. And that's
Okay.
in the planning
Okay.
of this, it involved that.
All right, so I do believe that this is an important project. I think it's important to have the coverage that you're looking for. I guess I was looking for some sort of assurance that, once we go ahead and move this equipment over to the new site and Marcus builds this new tower, that there won't be any surprises coming down the road. And also I was interested, I don't know who to ask now since Mark dropped off the call, but maybe Anna, you could answer this. What types of revenues will we be looking at next year with Marcus leasing the land to construct this tower on?
So to begin with, the lease, it's a $1,000 per year base fee that they pay, and it goes up, I believe 3% each year for the term of the contract, which it was set up to be 20 years. With after the initial 20 years, there can be 5-year renewals. And then in addition to that, if they are to take on any customers, we are to get 50% of those revenues.
Well, $1,000 a year?
That's correct. That's what the contract says.
And if they take on it, well, who are their customers currently that this will be supporting?
So the way that the contract is written, it's basically the tower for their use, but if they take on customers, then we are to get 50% of the revenues.
Customers such as cell
Yes.
phone providers? So
Yes.
right now right now they don't have any cell phone providers that will be utilizing the equipment on Marcus's equipment on this
Yeah.
tower.
Not
Okay.
to my knowledge at this time.
But it is written into the contract that if they do take on those types of customers, which I would think would certainly be worth a lot more than $1,000 a year, we're entitled to 50%.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I really appreciate that information. Does anybody else have any questions for the chief? Or again, Brooks Giannakos is on the call for any technical questions. And hello?
Yeah, thanks for that discussion. I was just wondering, is there any maintenance costs for this tower for the town?
For the tower itself, no, there wouldn't be. The only thing would be if we had a failure in one of our antennas, for example, or
Okay.
there was a communications problem that our IT vendor Star would have to go out and take care of. Other than that, everything else would be covered. We have a maintenance contract with Utility Communications, which covers all of our tower sites, all of our communications equipment. So there should not be, with the exception of a need to replace an antenna because of a physical failure. If there was some type of damage to a cabling, those would be the things you may have to have a maintenance, but everything else is covered under maintenance contracts.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question. Thanks, Chief. I was just wondering if the existing temporary tower is going to be decommissioned, or will it just morph into something else, or have some of it?
No, it's my understanding is going to be decommissioned, taken down and taken away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not on our property. And again, I couldn't fully answer Camille's first question, but it is not a town asset. I don't know exactly who in that process owns it, if it's Marcus or if it's a solar farm. I'm assuming it's Marcus from my understanding, or anything I've seen in this project, but it's certainly not our asset to keep or put anywhere else.
Right. So there's no redundancy of communication. And yeah. Okay. So this is a straightforward new use on the new tower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I can't stress enough. If you were to look at the temporary tower, to put it in those terms, it looks like an erector set. It doesn't look like what you see as a normal communication tower. It really is meant for temporary. And, to kind of piggyback on what Camille said, I don't think there was ever any intention it was going to be up there for 4+ years. Certainly, I think it was supposed to be very, very temporary and has limped forward and gotten us here. It's gotten us where we are, and I'm thankful for that, but certainly would not be comfortable in saying this is a long-term solution for our town.
Yeah, and I do understand that the Mastaway Tower, definitely fills in a number of communication holes, that existed because of the topography and so forth. So it's a good opportunity for us, and especially the timing isn't so bad because with redoing communications with public safety, it's actually maybe advantageous. I'm not sure, but okay, thanks.
Other questions? Rich, Peter, John? No, you're all set? Everybody all set?
Just one question. For the public safety building on the south end of town, will that require a tower down there as well, or is it going to be all fiber?
So it's fiber. So what we're doing is we're maintaining the tower site at the current dispatch center, and then there'll be fiber that will go from one point to the other. I will say in a perfect world, which we know we're far from a perfect world, all of us, at some point, if there was the ability to put a tower there so you didn't have to rely on fiber, that would be a benefit. However, it is not required in our system. The system is being built so that is not needed. The coverage wouldn't be there. It simply would be a redundancy issue. But again, we don't live in that world where that's available to us right now.
Right. And the tower and the fiber will have the bandwidth that's necessary for all the new things that we're going to implement.
And this is the state, and thank you, Rich, that's a great question. It's a state public safety fiber. So it really part and parcel is meant to carry these type of communications and to carry, the data that's needed on that.
Okay, thank you.
So actually, yes, John.
Dave, the microwave equipment that's on the water tower on Boston Post Road and
Yes.
At the solar field, that's all being moved to Mustaway Road.
No, the water tower will remain. So basically what the microwave equipment is being taken off of the temporary tower, placed onto the Mostaway tower. In that microwave communications, that dish will communicate with the other microwave dishes. So they will all be aligned to have communications amongst themselves. So the water tower will remain because that's part of that system that is set up.
Well, it says on the back of the sheet here, move the microwave from Boston Post Road water tank to the Boston Post Road tower.
To Boston Post Road to Boston Post Road?
Yeah. So what are they referring to there?
Can you have Brooks, wait, Camille, is there a way to get Brooks?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yep.
It's on the back where it says professional services.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me, John?
Yes.
Yeah, so currently right now, the solar field, the temporary site is connected to the Boston Post Road through a microwave link. Now, when the microwave is moved to the Mostaway Road location, what we need to do is take that end from the Boston Post Road location and move that to the EOC tower. So that is the reason for that. The topology, there's a ridge there that prevents, us to take the Mostaway Road tower and point that at the existing Boston Post Road. So that's the reason for the move.
Okay. So there's still going to be equipment on the water tower.
Yes, absolutely.
And how about the same goes to the solar field?
No, the solar field is going to be completely eliminated with this move.
Okay.
All the equipment up there will be transferred, to the new Mostaway Road tower.
Okay, so there'll be two sites, one at the water tower and one at the Mustaway site.
There's actually more sites, John, in the town. The radio system consists, and I might be getting a little off cue here, but briefly, basically, Boston Post Road is one of your sites. Roxbury Road Tower is another site. The Niantic Firehouse also has what we call a receiver site. And the Mostaway Road Tower, when it's constructed, would be the final piece in the puzzle.
Okay. And I think I watched part of the Board of Selectmen from last week. And Chief, you said that the communication at the new police station and this communication tower will complement each other?
Yes.
It's going to integrate, yes.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Rich?
Yes, one last question. For this transferring of equipment from the temporary tower to the Mostowi Tower, about how much downtime will there be, and is there a contingency plan for that downtime?
Do you want to take that, Chief, or would you like me to?
Well, Brooks,
address that?
if you
Yeah.
can explain just the technical aspect of the time of how long that takes.
Right. So the trick here is, Richard, to put all the equipment on the new tower, all the antennas and everything that we can let's say, move. The day of the move, basically, we're going to have guys taking our equipment, the physical radios that are located in the ambulance. They will be moving them to the Mostowi Road location. And there will be another crew moving the microwave, again, to the new EOC tower, and again, from the Boston Post Road site. So the estimated downtime, I'm thinking it's going to be probably on the order of a day, maybe two, before we get everything up and running. And then we have to realign the entire system. But in the meantime, you still have two transmitter sites, as I alluded to before. So Boston Post Road and Roxbury Road, along with the Natick Firehouse, will still be in operation. So the coverage in the northern areas of the town for that short period of time may be compromised, somewhat.
So certainly be something too that will ensure that during any downtime that all, police, fire, EMS units are, certainly cognizant of that fact and, make any adjustments they need to do in their responses and their communications. But, it's one of those things, unfortunately, the temporary solution being taken out doesn't lend itself to another temporary solution.
Thanks. That helps.
So actually, I have a question for Ann Santoro. Because Ann, you and Bill Weber had worked on the town's purchasing policy a few years ago. And I'm just wondering, what was the threshold? Because I only have a draft in my records here. I'm not sure I ever got a copy of the final purchasing policy. But what was the threshold for goods and services that required an invited bid process?
So I think we're at 10,000 to 50,000. I have a copy handy actually. But that's, and that's short of obviously competitive bid process, which is 50 and over. I took a look at it while I was looking at this as well, but we do have a number of exceptions to the bids and quotes, and that's found in section 8 of the purchasing policy. For me, just looking at it, in my own judgment, it's not official or anything. I saw it as kind of a unique product or service, which we've often had with equipment or software, things like that. Sometimes continuity of service is another reason, particularly something like emergency or radio communication, something like that. So for me, it kind of fell under that category. So I wasn't necessarily looking for an invitation to bid here for utility communications and then 2 other vendors or something.
So just so the other Board of Finance members understand, the town does have a formal purchasing policy in place. It looks like bids between 15 and 50,000 have to go through an informal bid process. I do see in our packets that we received a bid from one vendor. And so I think the record needs to clearly reflect what the exception is to this particular appropriation request. And I'm not sure that best comes from you, Ann. I think that should come from the first selectman, or perhaps chief, or hey, I'll take it from Anna. I'll take it from somebody, but I don't we need to have it documented why this didn't.
I think there's certainly an unquestioned continuity of service. We have a single communication vendor which maintains our entire intricate radio system, which is the vendor that has provided this quote. But also inside of that quote, you also have services that are broken down from 2 other vendors, in this process. 2 of which, Star Computer, is also under contract to provide services to emergency services, as well as Utility, who's under contract to maintain and really provide our radio service. So to me, I think it's a very clear continuity of service. It certainly is something that you cannot, in my mind, go out to the open market, expect a company to bid and then be able to come in and understand and maintain and align the radio system that they have had no part in putting together. This is a piece in that very giant puzzle of making this radio system work. So that's my viewpoint of that, and I think in my opinion, it very clearly fits into that purchasing policy exemption.
Okay, thank you, Chief. This is for Karen Dimitrik. If you could please capture what the chief has just stated to make sure that that goes into the minutes. Okay, Karen?
Yep. Oops. Okay. I heard you.
Yeah, and I think the chief clearly stated that number 3, the exception, number 3, continuity of service was definitely continued. All right. So you can listen to the tape too if you need to recapture anything that he said. Okay, thanks, Karen.
Yeah, and Camille?
Yes, Anna.
Yeah, and I would concur with that continuity of service in this situation.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Appreciate that. I just want to make sure the public understands that we covered all of the proper procedures that we spent a great deal of time implementing. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion from somebody for this particular appropriation request.
Okay, I'll move to appropriate and transfer $19,118 from CNRE Fund 32, account 32-70-300-500-999, parentheses, townwide projects, to an account to be established titled Radio Tower Infrastructure. This resolution is passed under the guidance of Executive Order 7S, with no town meeting and being less than 10% of the current budget.
Thank you, Ann Santoro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who was that? Thanks, John. Okay, any further discussion?
Camille,
Yes, Rich.
Angelo has dropped into the attendees rather than the panelists.
Oh, who did?
Ann Chichello.
Oh, let me bring her back. Okay. Thank you. We need her for the vote. Okay, she's back. All right, is there any further discussion on the motion that's on the table, on the motion before us? Any further discussion? Okay, so let's do a roll call for this vote, and I'll start one by one. I'll go first. I vote aye for this. That's Camille Alberti. Ann Santoro, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Birmingham, how do you vote?
Aye.
Richard Steele, how do you vote?
Aye.
Peter DeRosa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ann Chichello, how do you vote?
Aye.
Very good. We have a unanimous decision. Congratulations. Thank you for your time, Chief and Lieutenant Jathersky. Thank you, Brooks, for being on the call. And congratulations. I guess that's it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good night. With that, we'll move on to the next item, which is old business. Do we have anything for discussion under old business? Seeing no hands and hearing no voices, we'll move on to public discussion. There's nobody left on the call from the public. So we'll move on to board comments. Does anybody have any comments? Any board members have any comments that they would like to include in the official record? Seeing no hands, hearing no voices, we'll move on for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Rich. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thanks very much. If we don't see you, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Be safe, be well, and we'll see you in January, if not before. Good night.
Good night.
Night.